I have a confession.
Tell me all things.
Well, if you know me, you know that I like to get really, really deeply entrenched with different topics. It was gel nails, fairy smut, and we've moved on, okay, to, drumroll please.
Yes, hold on.
Okay, thank you. Furniture and making inexpensive furniture. So I just made a table. I have to still put together my final reel about it, but I got to style it first, which means I got to go to my second favorite place, which is IKEA, which also means if you're watching us on YouTube, here's the plan. It's probably going to take me like 6 months, although I need a measuring tape first and then it could go faster. I'm going to style behind me, get some more bookshelves and cabinets. And I've been looking on Pinterest for like fake built-ins and cabinets and all of these things. And I'm just so excited. I haven't drawn a single thing, nor have I measured a single thing. And yet every night I go to bed dreaming of what this will one day look like. So stay tuned
right on.
for my next obsession.
So at some point we're going to be doing an episode and all of a sudden behind Alex will be a new piece of furniture.
Well, actually, I was thinking about it. There will be probably a few weeks of it in disarray.
There'll be some stages of disarray of furniture, and then one day it will be all made there.
Maybe I do need like just a backdrop. I might have to do that.
Will you be a cat on one of our episodes? You'll be like, I am not a cat.
I'm not a cat, sir. I'm a real boy, sir.
To this day, that is one of the funniest moments that I ever had while watching anything. I was like, to this day, I'm like, I know that his assistant was like, I hope you die. And did that to him on purpose.
Die, cat, die. That one in like Forever, the little girl who busted in on her dad, who was on the BBC, which like was before the heavy zoom era. And like since that, like 20.
And the mom who thinks she's commandoing in.
Yes. Like since that, my gosh, we've had the I'm a cat, people using the bathroom on Zoom.
Yep.
There's just been so many good Zoom stories.
So many. And what I learned from all of those is never do anything without pants on.
Yes.
And just assume you're always being recorded.
Yes.
And just always assume you're being recorded, and don't sit in front of the camera and be crazy. Just be like a normal person. And just be like a normal person.
Yes, all of that is true. But so just stay tuned if you like to. I realize I like creating stuff and doing it digitally, like building websites and building products, like isn't as fulfilling. And also my business is at a place where like I'm not creating new stuff. I want to continue to refine and sell what I already have. So I got to channel that creative energy elsewhere. And apparently, you can get primer and you can like cover this and get cabinets and it's going.
I hate crafting projects. This all sounds very crafting. I hate crafting. I like to design crafting and then hand it off to somebody else to do that.
Yeah. Because you hand it off to me. I'll craft that.
Yes,
shit.
100%. It's not my jam. I'm like, wow, this sounds terrible. Here, go do that. If I did it, it would just turn out like a mess anyways, because I am not detail oriented in that way. It was a hot mess. Oh, I was going to ask you. So, Alex, how did washing and detailing your car go?
All right, so that's like another like obsession, but see, I've done it now. So like the obsession, it hasn't fizzled, but now I have reached YouTube expert level. So like I feel very comfortable and confident. So you're a troll. I spent like 2 hours on this week on Monday washing and clay barring and waxing my car. And then it rained 8 hours later. And I was just like, son of a bitch.
That's okay. The clay bar is designed to help protect it from the rain. That's the point of it. So you're just testing it.
It did. I mean, there's so much like contaminants in my paint. Like it was gristly is how it felt. It felt so gross. And I also like, I'm going camping. So I always swap cars with my dad because he like packs the car before we go. And so I'm driving his car and his car was so filthy. I was embarrassed to drive it. I also washed his car with my new detailing magistry expert skills. And so I'm happy to be driving that car now because it looks so much better than it did before, even when it's like rain dirty. So anyway.
So dear listener, if you're in the LA area and you need your car detailed, Alex has a new side hustle where you can bring your car over.
Yes.
She'll take care of it for you for a certain amount of cash.
Yes, this is true. Also, if you want furniture built, it'll take 6 months, but I'm doing that now from my garage as well. So come on over. I mean, honestly though, detailing, I just gotta add, that shit is hard. That is very physically demanding. Very hard.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would never want that job.
No.
That's why my car is always dirty. Totally. So let's go ahead and get this party started. Hi, I'm Sybil Solon. I'm an esthetician and spa owner.
Hi, I'm Alex Ellis. I'm a body nerd and wellness expert, and we are business besties.
And bosses, running your own business, it's hard.
But we're terrible employees, so we're figuring it out.
I've already figured it all out, but we promise to share everything we know about what it takes to make 6 figures and beyond.
And be brutally honest about what works and what totally sucks.
A bunch of it totally sucks. Let's get started. Alex is making me laugh so hard today. If you're not watching this episode, she's dancing and making me laugh so hard. I can almost not keep my stuff together while doing the intro.
My opportunity to do that. I'm really excited.
So hard on this episode.
I apologize. Well, welcome back. Welcome back to Skinfessional. On today's show, we're talking about real estate, specifically finding your perfect space.
And how sometimes that dream space you've been looking for ends up being a nightmare.
Dun, dun, dun.
Prep is all what's important with this, guys. Prep.
Yes, these are all important questions. So I have never, I've never had a lease for commercial space, but I have rented temporary spaces for like live events or, just like live events. And also I have even found a free space. So stay tuned for that. But let's just start with the fact that it can be hard.
It can be real hard. It can be hard. So if you're out there and you're like, I want to get my own space, guys, it can be real hard. I know that I've been in 5 spaces. And one of the spaces I was in for 2 weeks, I built it all out, was there for 2 weeks, was like, I got kicked out. It didn't work out.
Are you serious?
I had to leave. Yeah, no, it was terrible. It was really terrible.
Oh no.
A lot of my lessons learned we're going to be sharing in this episode. But yeah, so make sure you ask a lot of questions. Make sure that you trust the person that you're like renting from. It can be really bad. Another place I was in was pretty much the business was sold out from under me. And luckily the people who were buying the business were ethical and they came to me and said, so this is what's happening. Has the owner told you that? And I'm like, no.
Oh, shit.
Right. And I was there for 9 months.
Oh my God.
And then the next place I was in for about 2 years, and I had the trouble with my next door neighbors. And so finally the owner was like, you got to go because you're not getting along with your next door neighbors because they're, essentially gangsters and you don't get along with the mafia. And I was like, no, I won't be pushed around. And then the next location I had was really great. And I was there for a very long time. But sometimes the universe is like, it's time to end. And I'm in a sublet now, which I've just been told that I have to go out of. It's the end of my sublet. But ended on a very lovely, nice note. So I'm back to looking for a space. And that is why all of these things are coming up again because looking for a space is hard.
So as you're going into this process of finding a space, like what does this process look like? Like take us from like ideation to execution.
Yeah. So generally I sit down and I'm like, what do I actually need in a space? So for me, I've learned over the years that there are some hard yeses and nos. So for me, parking is the most important thing. It is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm in the middle of nowhereville. Parking. Like I can be in like a land where people are like, is this even a business? And I'm like, yeah, I'm working on some dude's truck, but there's parking. Don't worry about it. Because for me, parking is so vital.
Yeah, especially in LA, everyone is always late and you don't want them to be late and then have to drive around looking for parking.
Also, people will just abandon things. They're like, I couldn't find parking. I gave up. And they just like, I had a client tell me a story on Sunday where she was like, I tried to go to my yoga studio. They were having a marathon. So people were parked in their parking lot. I called them and was like, I'm not coming.
I've totally done that. I just was like, I got up early to go to a class and everything. And I got over there and it was like trash day. So there was like no parking and I just went home and I never went back.
Yeah. So these are parking is the most vital thing in my opinion. Yeah, but I think it's anywhere. Yeah. I think it's anywhere. Parking is so important. And I don't think people give enough weight to the need for parking. People are like, well, the location, location is important, but I think you can give a little bit more space to location because you can always get new clients. You can always get your hardcore clients will always follow you. Some clients are never going to follow you, so don't worry about it. But nobody will see you if they can't park. It's too hard. Forget it. They're out. The next thing for me is I know like the things that I need. And one of the things that I really need is I need a bathroom and a sink that's easy to get to. So I don't want to be like, you have to go down the hall with a key and it's around the corner. And like, no, it has to be like very convenient and close because my people are going to need a bathroom and I need a sink. And that's that.
Do you need hot water?
I do need hot water, but I have a kettle. So like I'm currently subletting in a Salon Republic where I have a sink in my room and there's no hot water in it. Like there's too many people in the building. So I have a kettle and I get the water out of the sink and I heat it into my kettle. So that's not per se. I just need water, guys. I just need water, and I prefer somebody to dump my water. I actually don't even like having a sink in the treatment room personally. I think it makes too much noise. I prefer to leave and come back. Personally, it's a personal choice, but I know some people love their sinks in the room. But bathrooms are key. Sinks are important. For me, it's also a matter of how kind of like quiet or loud it is. Now, mind you, 2 of my locations have been attached to a gym. 2 of my locations have been attached to a gym, and I've been fine. But because of that, I think I also prize my quiet. When I do find a quiet location, I get really excited. I'm like, ooh, it's so quiet.
I mean, that's
Alex added natural light, which I agree.
Yeah, I was
having
gonna say
the right kind of light
too about quiet and natural light. So I was teaching in a yoga studio that got sold, and I don't remember. I stopped teaching there. I can't recall exactly why. And so I was looking for a space for my students to continue to teach. So I was looking around. I found a place that had a great yoga studio with great mirrors, which was really awesome. And it was in the middle of a like sports facility. So there was a basketball gym. They had a large basketball program, which was fine most of the time, except when like the 12-year-old girls were practicing and like they can't help but scream. Yeah, it was really weird. Always screaming. I was able to make it dark in there, but then you would just hear, ah!
Right.
So yeah, like who's also like in the surrounding area as far as neighbors. But the natural light, if you tend to work during the day and you want it to be dark, maybe that doesn't matter as much for you. But I just think there's something nice about having natural light in your space and not having to rely on fluorescents or light bulbs or lamps. Also for me currently, when I'm looking for spaces, it's for filming. And for filming, right, I want the best light possible, and natural light is a piece of that as well.
Absolutely. So I know for me, I work in dark rooms. Most estheticians, we work in dark rooms. We don't care as much about natural light. My very first location had 0 windows, not one. I worked in a brick box with nothing. It had 5 doors and no windows. And guess what? It was perfectly fine. It didn't bother me at all. But when I would do makeup, I'd be like, this is really difficult.
Right.
So just know your needs and understand why you have those needs. Understand when you are making your hard yeses and nos, understand why you want them and if you really can negotiate them. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is size. My very first location, I couldn't walk around my bed. It was 42 square feet in the room. And if you need to know, that's like 2 bathrooms.
Tiny.
It was totally small.
Yeah.
But it had a bathroom attached to it and it had a sink. Therefore, it wins all the awards for Sybil. So understand that like, I know that I can work in a tiny, tiny space that is super small that barely fits me and my client. They'd walk in, they'd walk onto the bed. That's pretty much the size of the room. When I get bigger space, it's great. That's fantastic. But when I have a small space, I can manage it. Know thyself. Understand what your needs are, and just understand what you're willing to do. Because a lot of times, let's talk about pricing on stuff. We'll say no to a space because you're like, well, it's beyond my price range, and it'll be like $200 to $300 outside your budget. But then if you actually look at how much it costs to move there, how much it costs monthly for your utilities, maybe your utilities used to be included and now they're not anymore. If you ask those questions, maybe it's in a hotter area, so your air conditioning bill is going to be more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
My first box location had no air conditioning at all.
Yeah.
Zero location, had no air conditioning. It was a box, had no air. Had to sort that stuff out. So these are all things you kind of have to think about when you're like going to a space. Really sit down and think about how you are going to use your space, the cost it's going to cost you. And I've talked about this before, but when we look at a space, we think about how pretty it's going to be. We're going to Instagram it. Da, 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 da. At the end of the day, people are going to lie in that space and they're going to close their eyes for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And you might have to move. I am very successful at my job. I have moved 5 times in my time in business.
Mm-hmm.
That means everything that I've spent money on has either had to come with me or I've had to ditch it and leave it behind. And I may or may not have been able to use it again.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're putting paint on the wall that costs money and you're building out shelves, et cetera, know that you might have to leave that at some point. And did you really want to spend a lot of money on these things that may not fit into a new space that you might outgrow, et cetera?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I've moved, it has cost me a minimum of $5,000.
Yeah.
I do not care if I move to a bigger space or a smaller space.
That's such a good point when you
$5,000.
mentioned that, because I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. But yeah, the moving expenses, new furniture, paint, like walls, like all of that stuff costs money.
Flooring, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A minimum of $5,000. And that's just for the space. That's not for the moving it and the whatever. That's just to make the space so I can use it again and like reuse my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if you're watching this episode, you're looking at the space behind me, which is in my home. If I had built this out again, it would have cost me probably $5,000. I just took my spot and jammed it in a room and was like, hoping for the best, guys. But I still had to like build shelves and move stuff around. Minimum of $5,000, everyone. Every time.
Yeah.
Every time you move. I did want to talk about when you're pricing a space, there are going to be terms on your leases. Now, when you have done this, Alex, have you, with your temporary spaces, what kind of things have you run into?
Very casual, because the amount of time I've been using has been super infrequent. I'm also, I have to say, lucky that a lot of the spaces, like my main filming location right now is at my church, and I'm able to film there for free, which is fantastic because nobody's there.
Mm-hmm.
But also Airbnb for temporary spaces is another location that,
Mm-hmm.
you can go into, not worry so much about changing stuff up, things like that. There's also a website called peerspace.com, PEER. We'll link to it in the show notes as well. That if you're looking, again, for temporary space, maybe it's for a client appreciation party, or I just need to film a course and I need a weekend in a better location that's not my regular location, or something like that. And those types of websites, everything's kind of like built in for you. But for me personally, at this point, everything has been probably far too casual, and just like email agreement and a handshake.
Well, I mean, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're going to be somewhere for a longer period of time, my sublet with my person that I subletted with was essentially just like handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's in a Salon Republic, so I had to sign their like lease agreement, their sublet agreement. But with her, it was just like, hey, I agree not to like jack up your crap, and we I'll keep it clean and I'll break it down every time I use it and then put it all back together. And it worked out great because we're both like ethical, nice human beings, right? But when you are looking at leasing terms, understand that a lot of times for retail spaces, a lot of estheticians, they want retail spaces. Know for you that you might not actually want that as a solo person. People will just walk in and you're actually working. And so that retail space that you really think you want is not the space you want at all. You want some behind back alley space that nobody knows where you are, and they're just going to come find you because they found you on Yelp, or they found you on Google, or they found you because of a friend.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. Like, I always think, I'm walking around my neighborhood as well, of like, if I had a space that was like a filming location and an office space, what would it look like? And that retail space, like where you can just walk into it, I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I don't want people looking in or trying to come in or anything like that.
Yeah. So I know that that's like kind of like what we all kind of imagine, but that retail space becomes difficult if you are a solo person.
Yeah.
There's nobody to it's for some people to just walk in. You don't want people walking in. I had that problem myself. Don't want that to happen. I had to leave that space. So, but those retail spaces, they do have something called net. They have net spaces. And so what happens is that any money that you make in that space, the person who owns that space nets part of it. It means that they take a piece of your profit. Yes.
I didn't know
something
that.
people do not realize.
Oh, shoot.
So It'll say like net 10 or net 15 on that.
Is that percent?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And so guess what? They get to look into your books. You have to make sure you are keeping books, good books. They can look into your books and they actually take a piece of your profit.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not, but like, wow. Okay. That's like $1 million tip right there.
It's part of your lease. It's part of your lease terms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there are other ones where a lot of times you can go in and maybe you start out with like a 2-year lease or a 1-year lease. And then once you realize you want to be there, remember, it's hard to move. You can actually negotiate your costs down if for a longer lease term. Once you've been there a little bit and your landlord is like, yeah, we like you. You're quiet. You don't cause us problems. We also would like to keep you. You're like, I also want to stay. Can I negotiate a cheaper rate? Mm-hmm. I know that I did this for myself. My lease terms with them were always 2 years. I negotiated a 5-year lease instead. And that 5-year lease, I was like, the first 2 years, could I not have a raise in my rent? After that, could it be the standard 4% that we usually do? And he was like, let's do that. That sounds great. Happy to have you for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
Asking. Always.
Ask for what you like. Ask for what you want. Let's talk about neighbors for a second. So I find that the hardest thing for me when I look for a space is I have to look at my neighbors, and neighbors are variable. They change, but like, look at who your neighbors are, because these are the people you have to manage and deal with on a regular basis.
This is like so true for like living spaces as well. And
yeah,
I mean, how do you vet neighbors?
Well, I mean, for me, I kind of like, I actually, if I'm serious about the space, I kind of look at who's in there. So when I first moved in my space, it was just offices around me. By the time I left, it was recording studios, mm-hmm. which I would never have moved in there, quite frankly, because I mean, they were loud. Recording studios do like music and weirdness at all the random times. And I try to actually introduce myself to people if I can. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, hi, I'm Sybil. And if they're weird about like talking to me, I'm like, they're going to be weird neighbors when I have conversations with them about the fact that their dog is pooping outside the building and they're not picking it up. You know?
I'm laughing because I know this is true. I'm like, oh, it's so gross.
Alex has heard all of my stories about, I'm like, I don't know. They're just pooping on the sidewalk and he's just not picking it up and he thinks that's perfectly fine. I don't understand this.
What about shared air conditioning units across multiple units?
Jesus. Shared air conditioning. So control of my heating and cooling has become very important to me as well. Because especially if you're waxing people or if you're in a place where it gets hot and cold significantly, I think for spas especially, being able to control your heat and cooling is really important. Mm-hmm. It's something you don't think about, but it becomes really important. So for me, my building changed that on me. I'd been the person who controlled the heat and the cool in my building, and then suddenly they decided that the front office, who's one person in an office, should control all of it because they complained the loudest.
Such bullshit.
And that really is what end of the day made me move out of that space. Few different reasons, but that was what was the end of the days. I made the decision I had to go out of that space that I'd been in for 10 years.
Yeah.
I'd been in for 10 years. So these are the things you kind of think about. But if you really love the space and it seems to be working for you, can you shift things around? Are there other things that you can do because it's a good space? But sometimes the price is not the first and end all be all thing. It's not nearly as important as you think it is.
Well, it's negotiable, right?
Right. It's negotiable. Also, it's sometimes you think to yourself, well, I'm moving into this space. I might be in this space temporarily, or I'm going to outgrow it quicker than I think I'm going to, whether you know it or not, if you're successful. Mm-hmm. Or you're like, I'm going to grow into this space. Mm-hmm. And can I talk to them about leasing it for less money for the first year and then more money as we continue? Mm-hmm. Because I know my first year is going to be hardest. Mm-hmm. So think about all of those things as you move forward. Other things you should think about is if you already have clients and you're moving, you need to be closer to that space. People do not want to move. Alex, you have a story about clients not wanting to move.
I mean, I had a client who this space was further. Okay. She had been walking to the yoga studio. But the yoga studio was not a yoga studio anymore. So like there wasn't really any other option, but she did not want to get in her car to drive, even though she had been a 2 to 3 time a week, every week for years person. And I still miss her. Margaret, I miss you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. The location matters. And, we always talk about they're going to come with you or they're not, like whatever. But if you're going like 30 miles away, they might not follow. So that is definitely something to consider as you're
Dude, if you're
choosing.
going 4 miles away, they might not follow.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like it really doesn't matter. If you are going somewhere that client is like, this breaks me. I have to go, past a traffic light that I don't want to go. I have to go over the railroad tracks.
So true.
I walk to the studio and now I have to get in my car and drive a mile. I just can't do that. That's beyond my ability to do it. You never know somebody's life. So don't assume that you're going to keep all those clients if you're moving your clientele, but do know that sometimes I already have clients who come from really far distances. So you might find that the clients are like, I'm still happy to come from really far distances. I don't care. You have parking. That's all that matters to me.
Very true. Very true.
I think that's most of the things that I really care about when I'm looking for my locations. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with location beyond just like, hey, price, what it's going to look like. When you walk in, don't just imagine yourself in the space. I know we get like locked in, like, oh my God, look at how beautiful. I could just put up shelves. My bed could be here. And there's so many other things to think about.
Yeah.
Think about like being in that space or not being in that space for a certain amount of time. Oh, final thing. If you're renting from someone else, think about the hours that you can be in there.
That's a good point.
Do I have access? What are my access hours? Because you might decide that you actually need better access than you might have, or they'll tell you have access at a certain amount of time and then they lie to you. And that's why I actually had to leave my first location that I ever got in 2 weeks, because I was out 3 different times and I was just like, you're not here. My clients are here. Where are you? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm running behind.
Oh, you didn't have a key?
No, she was uncomfortable about she ran like a wellness space. There was multiple people in this unit and she was uncomfortable giving any of us a key.
Oh my God.
Because she was afraid we were going to steal like her, like, I don't know, cleansers or something that she had out in her retail space. Trust me, nobody wanted her crap. It was like a multi-level marketing. Nobody wanted her crap. But yeah, I was just like, guess what? Red flags, as Alex has said.
Yeah.
I now know that this is not an okay person. I would never go into a space like that ever again.
That's fucking nuts. That's crazy. All right. So yeah, we've laid out a ton, but we want to hear from you. What are your yeses and nos, your red flags, your hell yeses and your hell nos? Send
your
us
stories.
You
probably have them.
Oh my God, so many stories. Send us a DM or tag us on Instagram. The show is at Skinfessional. Sybil is at Skin Fitness Expert, and I am at Hala for Mala. Or you can leave us a voicemail in our Skinfessional box. What's that number, Sybil?
818-473-5277.
And of course, if you want to tell a even better, more private story, send us an email at skinfessionalpod@gmail.com. That's skinfessional like the show, pod@gmail.com.
All right, everyone. Lots of information. I hope it helped you. So until next week.
Keep your secrets to yourself.
Unless you're telling us.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.